Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast, Superpower and Sidekick. I'm Kim Ang.
And I'm Cindy Kay, and we come together as often as we can to team up with spirit to live a life beyond our imagination.
Are you excited about your trip?
I'm so excited. I have little piles everywhere of things that I want to not forget when I pack. And I doubt that I could pack all that, but it's been a while. It's been 9 years since I've been on an international trip.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm I'm over the moon. We went and bought Mike a new suitcase right before. Yeah, we ran a few errands. He was going to take his daughters without even asking her, and I told him that that wasn't nice. Just to go buy his. I took him to Sierra Trading Company because they have that kind of stuff super cheap, and it was.
Hmm.
So we found him a good.
Yeah, can't wait for you to come back and tell us all about it.
Well, I received such a download at Ojo Caliente energetic wise, and I
Hmm.
could feel it was all those multidimensional energetic codes. I'm really intrigued on what kind of changes it brings to the planet and humanity, because we're much more symbiotic creatures than what I think myself or any of us actually realize. And I know that these connections, that every time that they're made, it doesn't mm, it opens up more of these superpowers. There it is.
Hmm. I believe
It
it.
takes them another level deeper. The superpowers are given, they're a gift from nature. So as we learn and reconnect to nature after being disconnected for so long, I think we're going to be surprised at what kind of gifts we actually receive.
That's exciting. So, what kind of gifts do you think it could be?
Honestly, I have no idea, but I would think it's going to be more and more synchronicity and being able to get into that synchronistic vibe without as much effort. I think it's going to get simpler and simpler and simpler for us to find that little niche for ourselves and find that synchronistic path. The other day we stopped at Costco, and Mike just had to run in for 5 minutes, and I went over and parked for him and waited. And I was just sitting there, play on my phone or whatever, and all of a sudden I knew I had to start that car and go over to the front door right then. And it was strong, and there's still that first inclination of, I'm crazy. Where did why do I huh? That actually still leads. And then I'm like, oh, he must be done. Maybe he just checked out. And so I listened, and I started the car, and I went in, and literally, as I pull up to the front door, he walks out the first set of double doors. In
Hmm.
exact same moment. And the more that I trust it without questioning it, it happens more and it happens more, and it gets easier and it gets easier. And I think that it's going to not just get easier for me, but it's going to start getting easier for everybody. That it's going to become more and more and more apparent that there is an energetic, intellectual quality that is helping to link us into our best scenarios.
And get us more kind of synced, right? In sync with spirit.
Yeah.
Because I've been feeling it this whole week, like this sense of knowing. When I know something, it's like it's so strong.
But there were some knowings you had like 6 months ago, and then the world wasn't looking that way. So it's like, well, I guess I heard that or I felt that wrong. And then there were some shifts last week that went, wait a minute, maybe they knew more than I did. Maybe they can see a little further ahead than I can.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and then since then it's like confirmation after confirmation after confirmation. Yeah, pretty awesome.
It's electrifying when you find it. It's
Yeah.
exhilarating.
Hmm.
Um, I almost feel like we all have a little bit of a sense of unrequited love, because we necessarily can't find that little synchronistic niche that we're looking for, so to speak. And so when you find it, there's also that feeling of fulfillment. It like it touches a place that Nothing material can touch.
And there's this like a sense of calm too, because you have this knowing. There's like so much noise around, right? And you just know what you know. And all the noise doesn't matter.
And the noise doesn't matter at all. And all the naysayers and all everybody that's wanting to keep you in the status quo and keep you stuck in their story, in their narrative, and they'll just come at you from right. I remember I was told I was going to go to Colac for the 10th anniversary of the tsunami. And there was several different outside physical things that said, no, you're not going. But I had such a strong knowing because I had been getting messaging about it for about 3 months prior that they could have said whatever they want. It didn't matter. I knew I was going. And I did. And weird things happened to make sure I got there. And that's just it. Even that's what I was trying to say. Even if we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, so we get this inclination, this inkling come to us that doesn't match the environment of today. And it's so easy for us to go straight into dichotomy and just argue the heck with ourselves and others. But when you see that first click, wait a minute, oh wait, I just saw that. That's what they were telling me about. Oh, and then it's a whole nother story. Then it gets fun.
It is fun. It's so fun. Yeah. And I feel like somehow I'm just, my heart is full of hope right now of what's like happening and what's about to happen. So it's very exciting.
It, we are speaking a little politically here. I will say that out loud because there's no reason to run around an elephant in the room. um, sorry, or the donkey, which, but that we have had some shifts in the outlook for the election this year, and we're not the only people that are inspired and happy that we're going to have maybe a little bit more choice than what we thought we were going to have in the first place. And that's a valid topic. I just saying that out loud, I realize what a valid topic that is. That prior, I cannot tell you how many people I've heard, oh, okay, I'll vote now, who were not at all planning on voting before this shift. You do not offer people choice, and a lot of times they're going to say, well, why bother? There's no choice. But actually offering someone a valid choice, something different than the other to make a choice, not the two same things shoved up together. Choose one of these. They're the same thing, more or less, and they're different. But I don't, I'm talking apples and oranges here. But um, I know for a lot of us, the thought of having a woman in the highest office in the United States is an inspiring and hopeful thought, and something that I think all of us have, in a way, are almost afraid to hope for, because whenever they do stick a woman out there, they're going to rip her to shreds. Or not homeless, I'm sorry, childless cat woman. Um, a woman makes a choice to not have children, and all of a sudden she's invalid. She's discounted. Or maybe even doesn't even make a choice. Jen Aniston stood up and said, hey, I didn't make the choice. I tried everything to have a kid, and I wasn't able. So does that make me non-valuable? Well, I'm going through some menopausal issues and some hormonal that I've been going through almost 10 years. And doctors would rather prescribe someone antidepressants than the hormones they need. And, the female hormones are the only hormones in nature that when they're depleted, that modern medical science does not automatically replace. And, there's just been a real disconnect for women in the medical and politics and so many areas. And heck yeah, for me it's not about the two fractions of our democratic system, because I really do think the ugly arts, or I don't know how you say that word, but the billionaires that run the corporations are actually the ones running this country. I think no matter which side up, even now, even with the changes, there's still puppetry going on. There's not necessarily change. But the thought of being represented for the first time in our country, it does matter to me. And I don't feel like we've had representation before now. Well, and I want to bring up the topic because we've talked a little bit about it of like Pete and people saying, well, there can't be a black woman and a gay man running on the same ticket. There's no way that they'll win. And that is a perfect example of what I was talking about, how people will argue for their story and they will do anything to make sure we stay in that box within that story.
And when I brought that up too, it's like people were like, "Oh no, America isn't ready for a black woman, isn't ready for a gay man." And it feels as if it's their fear of rejection that they're projecting.
It's
And then
projection. I
so
think we're past
they,
ready.
yeah, exactly. And so I feel like, okay, it's the fear that's being projected onto them. And then they create their own narrative in their mind that America isn't ready, when in fact, America has changed. I mean, just look at what happened once Biden pulled out. I mean, the energy just went through the roof.
It did.
Yeah,
But that to me, it's not even about the politics. It's a perfect example of if people don't have choice, then they're just going to not do anything, literally anything. Um, and how much just having a choice can bring hope back into a situation. And why can't we have all forms of representation for everybody that exists within this country? And I think everybody is valid and viable and valuable to the system and should be in it. And that there's no more blocking all the minorities out. First off, I don't believe in the majority minority. I think it's a lie to begin with because you can play with numbers and it's a lie. Um, but it's not even about that. It's the main thing I'm wanting to focus on here is that people will argue to keep things the same at the same time that they want change.
right.
Okay, I'm going to bring in a completely non-political. I'm going to use my husband. He gave me full permission before we even started this. Like 6 months ago, he said, "Anything ever comes up, you're welcome just use it." So because he knows me, okay, for he's a hoarder, and we moved from one house to the next house, and he didn't do anything but more move the hoard and mix it up worse, and actually end up he left some like family heirloom stuff that are now ruined and some other things. And this whole 4 months, I've been trying to talk him into getting it done. And he'll keep trying to tell me, oh, I'm just going to build this building and it's going to fix it all. I'm going to build this building. And I'm like, if you organize it and clean it, it's going to all fill down in the building we already have. But no matter what, it's skirting the issue and never actually taking care of the issue over and this has been going on for 25 years. This isn't We had problems in 2015 pretty bad about his hoarding. It's another story. But he's at my daughter's best friend is kind of a little bit of go-getter and she's an organizer, so she got on him and they got out there together and they pulled every bit of it out. It was completely all over my yard, but it's slowly but surely it's disappearing here and it's going back into the storage and it all is neat and organized and there's still room left over. But he argued for his story for 4 months. Just okay, 25 years and then 4 months at this house. And he argued for it and he argued for it and he argued for it and he argued for it. And I asked him this morning, I said, how does it feel? It's almost done. And it's glorious. I could go out there and it's so beautiful. And for me, it's still junk, but it's all organized and I can find my kayak when I need it. He found a lot of our travel stuff that was completely buried in the mess that we actually need this week. There was, all of us kind of pointed out, okay, Cinda kept saying you had to clean that before we go to Peru. Now we know why. It's because that's where all of our stuff was underneath all of that.
Right, right.
But
Yeah.
he argued and he was not going to do it until he built this other room. But how he argued for that narrative and over and over again, and rather than just get out there and pull it out and do it. And I think we've got a lot of that going on around us.
So how does he feel
He
about,
feels great. He said it
see?
feels amazing.
Right?
And, I've been getting messaging for 5 years about that we've got something new coming in, depending on how much of the old we let go.
Mm. Mm. That is pretty spot on.
I had thought at the time because I just almost died, so I thought they were just talking to me personally, and then right after that, the pandemic hit, and I went, "Oh my gosh, this was a worldwide message." And, what I got was we had a chance of going from BC to AD for our own generation, for our time frame. It happened 2000 some odd years ago, and it's time for another one. But it depends on how much of the old we let go. And you know how many people are arguing to bring that old in or to just build another building to shove it into and hide it for longer rather than just taking care of it. And when you take care of it, it's taken care of. You don't have it's a little bit like dishes and laundry. Yeah, you can, but once you have it organized in a system, most people you can pretty well keep it that way, or it's a lot closer to it.
Yeah, it's cleaner, it's organized, and it's like less clutter, and the energy can move through better. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it feels good.
I had one friend that was upset at spiritual leaders being excited that we have a chance of a female in the highest office. And she was mad because spiritually there is no difference. And it should and I get what she's saying about not buying into the polarity. 1000%. But then again, I still think it's just as much um the Little Mermaid finally having a young black woman as being the Little Mermaid, and you know how many little girls got excited at getting to go see themselves represented as the Little Mermaid. This is about representation, and, you know, yes, it might be a polarity type concept or these kind of things, but it's also a breakthrough in something that has been stuck for a very long time.
Yes, that's a very good point because I just thought of this idea of racism, how in this country we've never truly dealt with it. And
Never.
now all the races are coming out of the woodwork, feeding this narrative, and people are saying, "Hey, wait a minute," you know. So we're dealing with it, and we're talking about it.
Well, contrast help things to come to light. And there's like this, there wasn't much contrast going on a week ago, and now we have a huge contrast.
And imagine adding a gay guy to that.
I know.
All the homophobes are gonna come out of the woodwork, and we can deal with it finally.
And that's just it. When this stuff is only living in the unconscious or pushed under the rug, shh, you don't talk about that. That's one of the main things I want to end. I'm done with the polite society. Polite society has done nothing but protect the predators. I'm done with polite society. I'm ready for I don't know, a wickedly fun one. Let's do something different. Something different. I don't care what it is, but different than the perfectionism and having to hide all of our parts all the time from everybody. So it causes all this social anxiety among all of us. I'm done with polite society. I'm done with keeping my mouth shut about things that hurt other people. Um, there's a lot of things I think, if we're going to change, if we're going to mix it up, let's just offer a bunch more choices out there in the world. And I'm all, this majority minority. uh, No, I want variety of all flavors.
Yeah, it just makes life more fun that way. It's like,
Well, and until then, we're never going to have a balanced society. There's always going to be an imbalance and everyone's going to be uncomfortable. And most people do not realize that their racism is not actually theirs. They claim it as theirs because conditioning makes it feel like it's yours, and you take ownership, and it feels very in that ownership. That's ego. That's identity, right there. Boom.
and some people claim they're not racist, but this whole this whole week has kind of had them look inward because some of the things that they're saying about Harris is outright racist.
Or
And you just have,
sexist.
yes, or sexist. And then so it's kind of like forcing people to work on their own shadows as well, right?
And I have a really big empathy, and one of the things that set me on the spiritual path was seeing these visions of massacres that happened through colonialism and feeling the first person and feeling that dehumanization. And I think the reason why I can empathize with that was because of what happened to me in my teenagerhood and being trafficked. So I understand what dehumanization feels like on a very, very deep level. But I also want to always bring to mind that I am a white woman of privilege, and that even if I do not see my own racism, I know that it still exists within me. So I want to sit down on the floor and allow people of color to school me on what that is and what that isn't, because I do not have the perception to know.
It's like forcing us to deal with that individually and on a more national level.
Exactly.
It needs to be dealt with.
Because
It
it was
really, really does.
conditioned. I
Yeah.
don't believe it to be in nature. I don't believe nature's going to reject any of her own. So there's no one that's better than the other. This hierarchy, that's the lie, is the hierarchy. So I would love to see something in the macro of the hierarchy falling. So it's not even to me about, I understand what my friend's trying to say, but she's missing another aspect of it, that I'm seeing a hierarchy falling just by us having choice. And it's more the hierarchy that I want to be literally demolished. So that way we can build a new society.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one thing to understand it on a spiritual level, but it's also you have to look at it on a physical level because with our own eyes, we can see there's a black woman, and yeah,
We're we're still inside bodies living the
right.
human experience. That is what I replied to her as myself was, hey, I'm a spiritual teacher, but I am also very much so human. And I'm also not bound to have beliefs according to what you think I'm supposed to have beliefs of. That's anytime anyone projects their beliefs on somebody else, that's the beginning of a cult. Because I do not believe that source will ever have a problem with anybody's sexual identity,
Yeah,
ever.
ever. Because the love between two souls is the highest form of God's love. And when it's represented in our society, then we can aspire to that level of love towards each other as well. So,
I find love to be on a soul level. So, the human kind of love actually is still based on that soul level. And for myself, I think that's one reason some people are homosexual is because their person just happens to be of the same gender that life. So it's not, there's no abomination to it. That's a misunderstanding. That's somebody else's judgment from a long time ago that is not valid in any way, shape, or form. And it's just something that's been carried on through conditioning and prejudice. And there is no prejudice without conditioning, I don't believe. I don't think we are born into prejudice.
no, we're not. I mean, it's the same as back in the 1960s when, Mr. Loving and who's a white man, married a black woman. It's like that love, that's between two souls, and they can't help it if one person is white and one person is black, right?
Yes.
So, to our human eye, we see it's very conditional because we can see, oh, how can you love a black person, or how can you love an Asian person? You know, so
But that's because somebody in their past has dehumanized people of that color, and it was
right,
conditioned into their brain.
right, exactly. And so Mr. and Mrs. Loving, ironically, their names are Loving.
Living.
Yeah, is taught humanity that love is just love. There's no gender, there's no color, there's no age.
Well,
So,
Johnny Cash's first wife was a woman of color, was a black
oh, I
woman.
didn't know that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and they were ostracized in society,
Yeah.
in that day and age. And he didn't care. He loved her. They I guess they were still friends even after they went their separate ways. So from what I don't know, just reading stuff. But I'm just saying the people who were brave enough in their love to go against the norms of polite society. I don't know why I've about decided polite society is exactly what's wrong with society. I think we should be polite to each other. That's not at all what I'm talking about. Unfortunately, it encompasses way more than being polite to each other. Um, and that's more what I'm talking about. But like I went, my favorite place, Grand Quivera, the where I had the first vision, Native American. There's even a plaque on there though about where they talk about how the Catholics saw them as heathens, and I can't believe that they have not even had enough respect for the peoples of that land to remove that plaque and change the wording on some things. These things are, and that a nature-based society were heathens. I heard a Christian just a few days ago, oh, don't accept any pagan practices. In other words, don't be a part of nature. That's what I hear when I hear it, because almost every pagan practice is just honoring that we're a part of nature. And so it was culture over nature. And I think there's a lot of humanity that is craving to go back to nature, that notice it missing, and that there's no amount of culture in polite society that can fill that hole.
Yeah, and just for us to be our authentic selves,
Number one, that we all feel like we have to put on this facade to be around other people. That if we're having a bad day, rather than just having the bad day in front of the other people so we can get the hot hugs that we need and deserve in that moment, how else does that person know you're going through a bad day unless we share? And how can we be support for another if we don't know that that person next to us needs some support? And this constantly keeping our mouth shut when we hurt, when we are in fear, and then, oh, you better be ashamed of that.
yeah, and the other thing I thought was hilarious was how Fox News was making fun of Harris's laugh, and how they were saying that, oh, this is going to turn off voters because her laugh is very annoying.
Could they
That's
get
what
any
they
more?
said.
I'm so glad I do not watch any news and I don't catch any of this because it's so petty. That's not even newsworthy on any level whatsoever. That is one more way of diminishing and demeaning a woman. There's nothing more than dehumanization with that. That's all that is. No wonder I've been so angry.
Pretty much, it's
It's,
dehumanizing
it's
because
dehumanizing.
and it's also propaganda because they're saying, oh, because of her annoying laugh that people, aren't going to vote for her.
Well, I'm going to say that there's going to be some that say the same thing about the other candidate, and that media has really, really, and I'm not going to deny that. I do think that there are some powers that are just making the whole thing a big show, so we don't see what's actually going on. I see it from all levels. The tail is wagging the dog.
Yeah, I just thought that was interesting because
It
it's like
is.
they're bringing everything out
Well,
into the
and it's
forefront.
so much par for the course of the patriarchy specifically,
Yes, exactly.
which is what I
Yes.
think is up in the universe for changing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one way I know this is everyone that I talk to is doing the same work in their own households to not allow that be in the, somehow we've all like woken up on the inside and said, nope, this is not going to continue in my home. And we're all doing the work in our home to make sure it doesn't continue. But we don't realize that's all micro. that by all of us doing that, it's really affecting the macro in a big, big way right now. I think there's no chance for it to survive, not in the long run. Even if this election doesn't turn out the way we would like to see it or anything else, no matter what, it is set to implode. That is what's up in the universe for healing right now, is that patriarchy and the hierarchy, the unhealthy, imbalanced hierarchy.
Oh, trust me, this election is going to turn out the way we hope.
Well, you had some visions, so and I was one of the first ones to say, "Hey, Elton, look, it might happen yet."
Yes. So, yeah, I'm pretty certain in my knowing of that.
Yeah. No matter what, it just got interesting, and this is a lot more fun than not having any contrast and or much of a choice. I do think they're different kinds of people. I'll give them that much. But no matter what, they still came from that same hierarchy. So to me, it wasn't much of a difference. And I'm not anti-man and I'm not anti-masculine, but I will say they've had their day in the sun and they need to sit down for a minute. And I want this world to be balanced and habitable for all genders. So I don't want this to take the power away from them to make it bad for them. I want to do it to make it better for them.
And their response right now to what's happening is pretty fun to watch, actually, because all the minds of MAGA world is exploding right now.
Can I say that this is exactly what happens to an ego right before it dies? Have you ever heard of the dark night of the soul?
No.
It's a phenomenon that happens on the spiritual path, that when you hit so far that you can only go so far until your ego takes a step down. And it's
Mm,
called the dark night of the soul, and literally you feel like you're dying, or you just wish you had, but you
mm,
can't. It's worse than
mm.
dying. But once you get out the other side, that void is not what it used to be before. Once you cross the void, it is never the same again. And I think that this kind of induced for some people that phenomenon. And I think it'll be good for them in the long run, but it's rough to go through in the interim. But you basically strip off what it is. It's a way to strip off the conditioning. It's like going through a car wash that pulls all the conditioning off, but it hurts.
Well, is it hurting because you want so badly to hang on to what
Yeah,
you had?
it's ego. It's completely the false identity that is masking the true identity. And it will fight to the last. I mean, it puts up a fight like nothing else on. Yeah. So I think a lot of the reactions and the triggering that you're seeing is it's when someone realizes their beliefs aren't what they believe them to be. That's what dark night of the soul is. So I think it's going to be a minute yet. But I want to honor that there is a part of that demographic that the reason why they have turned the way they've turned to is because they do not feel heard or seen. And let's face it, women, we've been feeling that for a very, 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 very long time. Um, Misogyny does rule the day, but it both sides want the same thing in a different way, granted, but ultimately they're wanting the same thing and they feel like they're missing the same thing. And again, I think that's representation. But well, I'm just saying that everybody's not happy is coming from like a same spiritual layer. We all know there needs to be some change, even if I may not agree, and there have been a lot. Let's just Christianity has told a lot of people it has to only go this one certain direction. And I know for myself, I mean, my life didn't go the way I planned it or the way I wanted to. I got waylaid, and I got waylaid more than once, and I got waylaid big time. And I did not end up with the life that would have been planned for me at all. That's fixing to happen to a lot more people.
which is exciting.
It is. I'm glad it didn't go the way it was planned because it ended up unlocking all these latent abilities. And I mean, my intuitive powers are just getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. I'm catching my little glimpses of, okay, you need to go this way. Okay, go this way. And then boom, big things, cool things happen. And, you know, I'm finding that Mike said something the other day that this Peru was him coming back on the spiritual path and him coming back to it. And he kind of implied not just him, but me and another one of our friends. And I'm like, back it up a minute here, sir. I said, when did I get off of it? He's like, never mind. Even when you were at your sickest, you said, well, it doesn't matter if I can get out there and do what I want to do or not. I can do magic right here and now. And that's what I did. And my life started changing, and Mike saw it. So he's like, okay, yeah, that's just me, not you. When my life got waylaid, some of the ways that it was waylaid, I had no choice but to turn to spirit. Two of them big time. One when I was 30, and then one just 7 years ago. And there was no one else on the planet I could turn to. Spirit was it. And both times, spirit came through for me, big time. And when things happen in your life that you have no choice but to go through it yourself, to get through it with you in spirit, that's like that dark night of the soul. But when you get to the other side, you're empowered. There's an empowerment, because a lot of what we're seeing in society right now is people feeling like they don't have their power. They feel disempowered. And that's why we're seeing a lot of the anger and the fighting and the discourse and all that, a lot of the polarity. That is where it's coming from. So it's actually very internal, and it's one I have a lot of compassion for. Well, about traveling, I've gotten, well, now I do know I'm already probably planning to go to UK Avalon in October, so two back to back. But from what I some of the things I've been getting as I'm preparing for this trip is like, this isn't just for this trip. The other day I felt very motivated. I woke up one morning and I had to go get a bathing suit right then. I hadn't bought a bathing suit in 20 years. I hate bathing suits. But and then I get there and everyone is working and they work really well on me, and I've never had that happen, and I'm kind of freaking out. And I put on another one and it works, and then I put on a one piece and it looks horrible, and I have to go back to the two. What's with the two pieces working for me and the one piece not? That's all. Everything, we are backwards land. And I got quite a few of the REI in Albuquerque, but because they were picked over, there were some pieces that were missing for the different stuff. So I went to the REI in Santa Fe, and I did find the missing pieces and put it all together. And I'm like, this is ridiculous, though. Why do I need 5 bathing suits? I did want to get 2 or 3. I did, because if you're like, we go to Ojo Caliente hot springs, and if we spend the night, we need 2 suits because it doesn't dry, and you have to putting on a wetsuit is bleh. So I did want to have more than one, but not quite that extreme. And whenever I went to go, I pulled cards because I couldn't decide what to do. It's like, I'm being ridiculous. And I pulled a card, and it was 2 of air, and it's perfect because this is exactly what I teach my clients. It's like, oh, you're causing dichotomy with your own knowing, and you're arguing with your intuition. Like, I'm feeling it to get this taken care of. Have options, different colors. What do I feel like that day? And then, nope, okay. But I actually had a feeling come in, and I go, when I pulled the question, it's like, it's because I'm back on the traveling mode. I need these suits. And I pulled a card, and it was the world. So sometimes it's not even just what we're doing, but how we perceive what we're doing.
Well, we're always the one that's holding ourselves back, right? With our thoughts and
We are our
doubts.
biggest naysayers.
Yeah.
But that's, again, outside conditioning has set that up for us. That argument. It was placed there. If I have any mission on the world, it's to get intuitive people to quit arguing with their knowing, and starting with me. And I'm not there yet, so I'm still working on me.
Okay, so how do you stop yourself from arguing with your knowing? What
Believe
would
it
be
when
the
it
first
comes
step?
through. Believe it when it comes through. When that doesn't work, notice that you just argued with yourself. The actual act of noticing that you're doing it changes the flavor of it. When you go, oh, I just argued with that. I had a thought, I had an inspiration pop in, and I had an itty bitty shitty committee, knock it down. Start noticing that play in your mind.
Yeah, and also to pay attention to the signs, because when you're feeling it and when you sense that knowing, like how you always teach me to like look at the clock or numbers. So I've been doing that so much this week.
And it's been validating
It's
your
been
experience.
validating. Yes.
Spirit validates. It's
Yeah.
so cool. Where society invalidates, spirit validates.
Yeah. Yeah. It is pretty cool. And then the
Notice
more that it validates, the more you um, have that confidence, right?
the more that you notice the synchronicities, the more that you connect with more synchronicities. You start, it's like you notice the frequency of it. And it's easier to go to it more. Every time we choose a synchronicity over a dichotomy and arguing with our knowing and actually follow our knowing, it gets addictive.
Yeah, it is pretty fun. And it's like it energizes you somehow from the inside, and it's like, ooh, this is kind of cool.
Well, you're no longer stuck in unrequited love, and you start feeling that fulfillment of the soul because you can feel that you're on the path that your soul is seeking.
Exactly. That's very well put. Yes.
It's definitely in feeling. That's the reason I want everyone to come out of disassociation, and that's why we started with shadow work, because you have to get to that to get to what we just got to. Because otherwise, all of these things that we've been talking about, all of this noise, all of this, you don't even realize that intuition and synchronicity and spirit is working in your life with you and source to nonstop bring you into synchronicity.
And a lot of that is with feeling. It starts with a feeling, right? With a
Yeah.
gut feeling, as they say.
And that's why the need for surrender. Because if we're not in surrender, we're already thinking 3 steps ahead. So how can spirit direct us when we're already 3 steps ahead? So when we come back into ourselves and surrender into the moment, that moment, then we stay open and clear to what spirit's saying. Mike and the hoarding, one of the things, because a lot of things came up as he was doing it. It's kind of, it's a psychic clear out, a psyche clear out. And that how many times he was missing spirit clues because of all the chaos.
That is such a good point. Of all the, we should we should we should really do the Cindaisms.
I taught a tarot class with my Rasa yoga friend. She's the leader of it. Sienna Sherman. Sorry, but she brought that up, and she even used the same word. She said, "We have got to make a book of Cindaisms." I'm like, how does everybody use the same word? I think it started with another one of my friends. She was the first one. Joy, how did you come up with it first? How come everybody's coming up with that? Yeah. And everyone says the same word every time, Cindaisms.
Well, because there's it's like it just comes out of you, and it's just so perfect. Yeah.
Thank you, Spirit. Spirit helps me to
Yes.
be much more witty.
Yes. Like you say, you have good writers.
I have good writers. I do.
Oh, the other thing that I was going to ask you, you saw that movie Inside Out too, right?
Yeah, we went to the drive-in and see it.
Yeah. I thought that was such a cute and clever film.
Get away from the keyboard anxiety. Just get away. And my kid, I came in, I was having a panic attack a couple days after it because right now I'm having one. I'm having a hot flash, and it causes me to have a panic attack. And all the kids they start yelling at anxiety in my head to get off the control panel.
I just thought that was such a really, really smart film.
Did you
So I
see
had to
the
go
first
back.
one?
No, and then I hadn't seen the first one, so I had to go back and see the first one. It's like, oh my gosh, this is
The first one
so
was amazing. I really love the first one. I
yeah,
like both of them, but yeah.
yeah. I like both of them too. I'm so glad you're getting this relief because it's like seeing a different person. It really is.
You know, I remember hearing about bioidenticals, I think 10 years ago, and I was curious then. But to get to a doctor that would listen to me past the chemical sensitivities and that I needed, they decide that they want me on antidepressants and that's it. And I am not going on antidepressant. You can't, there's no. Being psychic medium, whenever I did try it in my early 20s, it only thing it did was open the lower veil. And I heard things and saw things I don't want to ever hear or see ever again. And I'm not against antidepressants for some people, but why do doctors try to put women on antidepressants before they give them the medication that that person needs? Why is that the first thing they lead with? I woke up 10 days after getting the hormones feeling like myself again. My eyes were bright. I could see it in the mirror. I felt like I'd come home to myself. You tell me that's not physiological. How in the heck is that? Well, but I also had one of those doctors even. I said something about the sensitivities, and she said, "Send," or I can't, but she got on to me because it's like, no, you can't get over something that's actually happening to you. And she said, I would believe that you're mentally ill if you were always that sick. But when you get into a clean environment and you could get completely better and all of a sudden you're well, no, this is not all in your head in any way, shape, or form. That's the first time. I think that's the first time I've ever had a doctor believe me. I know there's something I would like to give a challenge for people to go on their first thought, to spend 1 week spend 1 week to go on your first thought, to just move on your first thought without any dichotomy. And okay, like me sitting at Costco, all of a sudden I had to start that car and go. Like that. I want to challenge everybody to not argue with the messaging as it comes in and move on it first thing. I want to see if we can do that, myself included. I'm totally throwing myself into this challenge. Or I can't be here next week because I'm gonna be in Peru. Probably we might try to get together. There is a free day there, so we might can do it on that free day. But if I'm not back, we make it a 2 week challenge. How many times, and maybe we can have a little something to take a tally. Okay, I moved on it the first time that time. Oh, the second one, no, that habitual argument came out first thing. Oops. So mark that and just see where the tallies end by the end of the time period. I think it would be a fun I think it would be a fun challenge.
Yeah, I think it would be too.
I think we need to be more and more aware of our inner dialogue. And I think that could be a fun way to add awareness. How often does spirit give us the clues and how often do we actually move on them
Right. Or trust it when it
or
first
trust
comes
it?
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or and also just as equally, how many times do we argue with it? Do our arguments ever end up correct? Maybe sometimes we're listening to something that's not our intuition, and something else will reach out. I mean, it can go both ways. I'm not necessarily saying it's going to go one way, but the point of it, the challenge, the point of this little exercise is just the awareness of it. I think for myself that I'm getting more than what I realize. So by adding this and doing a group challenge, I think it'll be easier for us to tap into it more.
I think so too. And it kind of forces us to tap in
Yeah,
because it's fun.
yeah. And I'm going to say one out, name it. Melissa, if you're listening, join us in this little challenge. That came to me in the moment. I actually like that. I think that could be fun.
Yeah, I do like that.
We'll take a little tally and we'll whenever we come back the next time, we'll kind of compare notes and see how we did and see what we learned out of it and what, because I think there's some things we're missing, and it'll help us to find some of those. Because the more that we find those little scavenger, hunt things, the more of them start appearing. It's like, oh, if we find the ones we've just been accidentally neglecting and missing, then they're gonna throw us more.
All right.
All
Challenge
right.
accepted.
Yeah. Woohoo.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good place to end on. And thanks everyone for joining us. And I hope you will be up to the challenge as well.
And please, post, talk about it, find me on social media, or just find my personal. I'm on syndicate.com. My voice cracked. But feel free to join the conversation and the challenge. Let's see how much we can follow synchronicity and spirit this week.
All right. Well, thank you and see you guys next time. Ciao.
Thanks. Click like and share.